we started that computer business. I ran it for about, I owned it for 16 years or 17 years, and I learned everything that I knew about customer service from that computer business. It was quite interesting. When we started WestJet, the computer systems were, that's great. The computer systems were, the legacy systems, global distribution system, if you know what that is. And I remember I used to fly around in Air Canada and Canadian when I was in my business. We had offices throughout Western Canada. And I'd go to check in, and they'd be typing away and typing away and typing away. And I go, what on earth are you typing? My name is Bell. It has 4 characters. And so when we come up with this idea to start the airline, I went and looked at some of these systems. And I'd say, just like your customers would say, okay, book me a reservation and then check me in for the flight. Let me watch you do that. And I'm watching them go through all these gyrations and hoops and stuff. And I go, what are you doing? And then I'd really mess them up by saying, I want to change the flight. And I watched this and I said, this is pathetic. We could never go on one of these systems. So we ended up writing our own. And we called it Open Skies. And it was written by a couple of guys, Dave Evans, who is a bright guy out of Salt Lake City, and David Nealman, who was a guy that had started an airline down there. And we just sat and burnt the midnight oil. And I love telling these stories because you guys are software folks. We wrote it on a Hewlett-Packard Mini called an HP 3000. It ran the Turbo Store non-relational database, and it was written in, get this, COBOL. That's what I picked. Because I said it's got to be really fast, scale to the moon, because we're going to start off really small, and based on our business plan, we're going to grow to 100 airplanes, and never break. And that was green screens, that was the only thing that worked. So we fired this thing up back in '96, and it ran the airline up until 14 years ago. Little footnote to that story is it was sold to a bunch of airlines around the world. It's now the 3rd largest reservation system on the planet. Now, I used to fly around all the time, and I was always puzzled at why there was this disconnect between the people and what I learned over time was that as the business got more complicated, people would detach. And as they detached emotionally from the business, the employees, their hand would go out for more money, and the unions would come in, the price would go up, the productivity would go down, and it was an unhappy place. Anyway, we knew we had to be different. We knew that in order to compete with Canadian Air Canada, in order to, we had a bunch of things that were going to drive our success. Most importantly was keeping the costs low, but also keeping the complications up. And we learned that the engagement of our people was so important. We had to be visible. This is the first thing we wrote in our business plan. Be different. Every touch point should be unique. Treat employees as number 1. Now this, in business schools, is a bit of a conundrum. Who's first? I sit on a public company board based out of Calgary, and they're going to do their shareholders report last year, and it started off by saying it's all about the shareholder. And I went to the CEO and I said, well, I got a problem with that. When our frontline people, our mechanics and our folks out in the field and our managers and the staff that run our branches, when they read that, what are they going to say? What are they going to see? It's all about the shareholder. What about them? And then we changed it up. But I think there is a conundrum. Who's first? The shareholder? Obviously, businesses are in business to make a profit. Or is it the customer? How many times do we hear the customer's always right? The customer's number 1. It was very clear to us, very clear to Southwest, that put your people first. They'll take care of the business and the customer and the shareholder. Number 5, hire for attitude and train for skills. Well, this became a mantra. We needed to hire the people with the right attitudes. We knew that we didn't want to hire people that had maybe I'm going to pick on Air Canada because I do. And we didn't want to hire people that worked for Revenue Canada. So those two are out. But we wanted to hire people with great attitudes, people that loved people, people that liked customer service, people that just got out of the bed in the morning in a good mood, had a great attitude. So we had a mantra, hire for attitude. Hire everyone for attitude and train for skills, except of course for the pilots. Or your kids, if you raise your kids and call them stupid, hey stupid, come for breakfast, hey stupid, do your homework, hey stupid, clean up your room, hey stupid, what are your kids going to become?
Stupid.
I called my Hey Millionaire. But I think that labels have a lot to do. So we had a call center, and I thought, well, that's kind of boring. Your agency, we're going to call center, and they're kind of a musty place, and people didn't like them very much. So we called ours a sales super center. We had team leaders versus supervisors because supervisors supervise. We had a bean land full of bean counters. We had a big sign outside our office that said big shots. We had a people department, not a human resources department. We took the word policy out of our customer service vocabulary and replaced it with promises. Here's what we promise to do when we mess up. I learned a lot about policies. I got to start my, I've never really worked for anybody, I got to start from scratch. And I learned from looking at other businesses that you need certain policies, but over time you create policies because people do dumb stuff. So somebody do something dumb, and you go, well, you sit around the table in your infinite wisdom as a management team, say, we better have a policy on that. So you write a policy, and it gets vetted by a bunch of people, and you stick it in the policy book. Pretty soon, after a number of years, your policy book's 4 inches thick. Nobody knows what's in it, and everybody's scared of it. And of course, we couldn't do that. And I go to the opposite. We can't do that. Why not? Well, because we've always done it this way. Okay, but why can't we do it? Well, because we've always done it that way. That's the way it's done. I got the same response when I said, well, let's take away the ticket. Because back in the days that we started WestJet's, there was a ticket. What do we need a stupid ticket for? I always lost my ticket. My wife would have to carry it, and if she wasn't with me, I would just lose it. The ticket would go poof. And I'd show up at the counter without a ticket. Where's your ticket? I lost it. Well, that's a problem. So I said, well, let's ditch the ticket. If you paid for the ticket and you put it on your credit card, we don't need a ticket. Show up at the airport, give them your name, and not many people forget that, and we'll put you on the airplane. We can't do that. Why not? Because you need a ticket. What do you need a ticket for? Well, to get through security. I said, what? Now we changed some language. Here's one of my favorites. You ever heard a company that says we're going to be the best? How many companies start with, well, we're going to be the best at blah, blank. I go, well, no kidding. What's the other option? We're going to be mediocre? We're going to be dead middle of the road? We'll put a big billboard outside our business that says we're no worse than anybody else? Of course you're going to be the best. Shouldn't have to talk about it. I know this will hit home for some of you. The customer's always right. Well, I don't know about you guys, but we had some bad customers. Some that I wanted to fire. They were a pain in the butt. But I always had a philosophy that said, I said to our people, focus on the 95%. If you got 95% of your people are going to be fantastic and 5% are going to be duds. Don't worry about the duds. They'll take care of themselves. Don't focus on them. Don't give them any more than 5% of your time because they'll consume you. And your 5% dud customers will do the same thing. Focus on the 95%. Make absolutely certain that you give the 95% of your time.